So all in all, the deception here is becoming clear. Why would there be no footage of a 24-hour sun? Where's the proof? Where's the proof that we live on a ball? Go look at images from 70 degrees north versus 70 degrees south. On a globe, they should be nearly identical. But you'll see that the south is a barren wasteland of ice and penguins, and the north is filled with trees, flowers, bushes, deer, bears, squirrels, elk, and everything else you can imagine. Why do all of these South Pole and Antarctic flights and planes have no windows? Is there something they don't want people to see, perhaps? Like, what's that sun doing? Why is it when you look at the WorldView 4 satellite images, which cover the United States in a pattern like this, stop in Antarctica like this, in a very circular pattern? Now, do I claim to know how it all works? Hell no. I've been lied to my whole life, like all of you. It certainly could be something like this, or there could be a southern continent like this. There could be no outer ice wall, and more land north and south. There could be Shambhala. There could be the Tibetan tradition of White Island and the Eternal Land. Universally through time, we've had legends that speak of Atlantis, or a sacred land located at the navel of the earth. Hindu mythology tells us about Meru as the mystical mountain of the earth's center. Like the Egyptians, the Indians conceived of a dwelling place of the gods known as Samaru. Hebrew legends speak of a place in the north called Luz. Many ancient lands speak of a first continent known as the imperishable sacred land, and is the most mysterious of the 7 continents. It is said to be located in the region of the North Pole. This sacred land is stated never to have shared the fate of the other continents, because it is the only one whose destiny it is to last from the beginning to the end. It is the cradle of the first man and the dwelling of the last divine mortal. Of this mysterious and sacred land very little can be said, except perhaps according to a poetical expression in one of the commentaries, that the pole star has its watchful eye upon it. Buddhist texts say that Shambhala can be reached only by a long and difficult journey across a wilderness of deserts and mountains, and warn that only those who are called to have the necessary spiritual preparation will be able to find it. One text says that the kingdom of Shambhala is round, but it is usually depicted as an 8-petaled lotus blossom. The modern theosophical tradition, too, recognizes that Shambhala is a real place. Shambhala, although no erudite Orientalist has yet succeeded in locating it geographically, is an actual land or district, the seat of the greatest brotherhood of spiritual adepts and their chiefs of earth today. From Shambhala at certain times in the history of the world, or more accurately, of our own fifth root race, come forth from the messengers or envoys of spiritual and intellectual work among men. It is surrounded by an akashic veil of invisibility, and an army of airplanes might fly over it and not see it. In it are gathered some of the most valuable records of the human race. There, surrounded by the greatest and most evolved human beings, the silent watcher of earth has his invisible abode. Meru, which was the Olympus of the Indians, is said to be situated in the center or navel of the earth. It was guarded by serpents, which watched the entrance to the realm of secret knowledge. According to tradition, it was the land of bliss of the earliest Vedic times. Occult teachings place it at the very center of the North Pole, pointing it out as the site of the first continent over the entire Earth. H.P. Blavatsky states that Meru is not the fabulous mountain in the navel or center of the Earth, but its roots and its foundations are in that navel, though it is in a far north itself. It connects it with the central land that never perishes. Occult teaching also corroborates the popular tradition, which asserts the existence of a fountain of life in the bowels of the Earth and in the North Pole. It is the blood of the Earth, the electromagnetic current, which circulates through all of the arteries, and which is said to be found stored in the navel of the Earth. In the book Paradise Found, William Warren writes, "The earliest inhabitants of the Tigro-Euphrates basin located the center of the Earth, not in their own midst, but in a far-off land of sacred associations where the holy house of God is situated, a land into the heart whereof man has not yet penetrated, a place underneath the overshadowing world tree." The Chaldean account of Genesis we read, "Human beings the great gods created, and in the earth the gods created for them a dwelling. In the midst of the earth they grew up and became great and increased in number. 7 kings, brothers of the same family, Iranian, Indian, Chinese, Scandinavian, and Aztec literature also refer to the ambiguous location of the center of the earth. The Japanese paradise was situated on top of the globe and at the same time at the center of the earth. It was called the Island of the Congealed Drop. Its first roof pillar was the earth's axis, and over it was the pivot of the vault of heaven. Similarly, the Chinese terrestrial paradise was also round in form and is described not only as at the center of the earth, but also as directly under Shangtai's heavenly palace, which is declared to be in the pole star and is sometimes called the Palace of the Center. The Egyptians located their Ta Neder, or Land of the Gods, in the extreme north. Today there is an echo of these ancient traditions in the fact that children send notes to Santa Claus, or Father Christmas, in his Wonderland at the North Pole, asking for gifts. The Eskimos have legends that they came from a fertile land of perpetual sunshine in the north. In Psalm 48:2 of the Bible, Mount Zion is said to be in the far north. And in Ezekiel 28:13-14, Eden, the garden of God, is placed on the holy mountain of God. In Hebrew tradition, the primeval Eden is sometimes said to be at the center of the earth. According to the Hindu Karma Purana, an island called Shvetadipta, or White Island, lays in the Northern Sea. More recently, we have even more polar puzzles as far as the open polar sea. Many 19th century explorers believed that beyond the belt of pack ice at the perimeter of the Arctic Ocean there was an open polar sea, and possibly continental land as well. In 1827, an expedition led by Edward Parry ventured far north of Spitsbergen, over ice and along leads of open water. As they sledged north, the ice field became lighter and more fissured, and they eventually found themselves on the edge of what seemed to be a vast open polar sea, containing only a few scattered pieces of ice. While attempting to reach the North Pole in 1871 to 1873, 2 young Austrian explorers, Karl Weyprecht and Julius Payer, discovered the islands of Franz Josef Land and came to believe that they were the outliners of a continental landmass. Lieutenant George Washington DeLong hoped to find this land, and in 1879 he sailed in the Jeannette through the Bering Straits into the Arctic Ocean, planning to take advantage of the warm, north-flowing currents, which he believed would open a way through the pack ice. However, in June 1881, his ship sank in the pack ice northeast of the New Siberian Islands, a tragedy which DeLong and many of his men did not survive. Early Arctic explorers reported seeing birds and animals moving north as winter was setting in, instead of going south, and inferred that they were headed to a warm land that must lie in the north. Parry once experienced a heavy fall of black dust in Greenland and thought it might be volcanic dust from the unexplored land to the north. In 1904, Dr. R.A. Harris of the U.S. Coast and Geodetic Survey published an article explaining why he believed that there had to be a large body of undiscovered land or shallow water in the polar basin northwest of Greenland. He argued that the prevailing currents seemed to indicate the deflection by an unknown large landmass lying in this approximate area, that the Eskimos living on the northern fringes of the Arctic Ocean had a tradition that a landmass existed to the north, and that the disruption of the tides north of Alaska indicated a moderating effect explainable only by intervening land. Various Arctic explorers actually reported seeing land in the distance, though it should be noted that visibility can be poor and mirages are very common in this area. Have you ever heard of Crocker Land? Another famous disappearing land was called Crocker Land, discovered by Peary. He saw it on the 24th of June 1906 from atop a 2,000-foot mountain situated behind Cape Colgate in northern Greenland. Peary says that through his binoculars he was able to make out, apparently a little more distinctly, the snow-clad summits of a distant land in the northwest above the ice horizon. Peary estimated that Crocker Land lay 120 miles from the northern coast of Axel Heiberg Island. How about Bradley Land? Frederick A. Cook stated that on his journey to the North Pole in 1908, he looked for Crocker Land but did not find it at the location given by Peary. However, he said he seen a mountainous, ice-clad land slightly further from the shore, which he named Bradley Land. He saw it to the west of his line of march, north across the pack, on the 30th of March 1908, and again 31st of March. Prior to his attempt at the pole, Cook expressed the common belief that land would be found north of the Arctic Ocean. Jan Leprecht takes quite a different view on Cook and Peary and the controversy surrounding them. Leprecht speculates that the land had been magnified horizontally. Nevertheless, for the mirage to extend over a third or more of the horizon, without any noticeable degradation in brightness, the land itself would still have to be enormous. Lamprecht believes that Cook's photo of Bradley Land may also be a telescopic mirage, probably of the easternmost extension of Crocker Land, which he thinks is located on the Earth's outer surface, but is being covered up because it lies too close to the pole or hole. He thinks that Keenan Land also could be a telescopic mirage of the same gigantic polar continent, seen at a distance of over 900 miles. Lamprecht also believes the polar land and hole might have been discovered in 1926, when Amundsen, Ellsworth, and Nobile made their transpolar flight from Spitsbergen to Alaska, but instead of publicizing their discoveries, they supposedly went straight to the military and were sworn to secrecy. If there is any land or polar opening in the region of the North Pole, they would surely interfere with the drift of pack ice. In this regard, Wally Herbert makes an interesting observation about his experience on the Trans-Arctic expedition. We began to feel that there was some obstruction along the imaginary line which describes a circle around the pole at a radius of 260 miles. A hump, perhaps, over which the ice drifting north cannot pass. Nansen had faced a similar problem during his epic drift in the Fram. After the first 18 months, it had become evident that the 13-man crew of the Fram were unlikely to come any closer to the pole than 300 miles unless they left the warmth and safety of the ship and set out on foot. Although it is often said that the Arctic Ocean and seafloor have been thoroughly explored, it should be borne in mind that this ocean is 1.5 times the size of the United States of America, so the possibility of a small opening or island with a tunnel having gone undiscovered cannot be absolutely ruled out, and as far as the possibility of a cover-up is concerned, well, it's worth noting that according to some mystical and esoteric traditions, certain sacred areas of the earth are protected and concealed by the exercise of occult powers. Many people have asked about the 24-hour sun in the south, and while we know that there is no 24-hour sun, we don't know that there's no 24-hour light. If you take a look at a couple of these images, you'll see that if we put anything past these guys, that would be a mistake. The ability to easily reflect or deflect the sunlight, or could it simply be an atmospheric effect? So do I know the answer? Nope. We need everybody doing the research. So the point is, we've been lied to. And step one should be pointing out the lies and exposing the liars. Then we will have people everywhere searching for the truth. So is there an ice wall? Where does it expand to? Is there more land south like the Iron Republic? Or is there a paradise north like the Garden of Eden? The answers are there for us to find once we realize that we live in a lie constructed by Freemasons, Jesuits, Jews, and the priest class. And now, add to the mix scientists, astronomers, physicists, and more. Not because they are hiding it purposely, but because they are too proud and too blind to look into what we're saying. You don't live on a ball flying magically through space. Be kind. Don't lie.